Our next question comes from Allison, and she has a question about time limits. She says, can you explain the time limits involved in filing a lawsuit over an injury? And are there different time limits for different types of injuries, depending on, the law? So what is the law regarding that?
Yeah, there are different time limits. So we say often here on the show that Mississippi has a 3-year statute of limitations. And that is typically the case. If you're in a car accident, your time frame is going to be within that 3 years that you have to file a lawsuit, or you will forever be barred from filing one in the future. But there are many other causes of action that you might find yourself involved in that have a much shorter statute of limitations time period. And so medical malpractice is a prime example. Your time to file suit against a doctor or a hospital could be shorter than the 3 years. It could be different based on whether the hospital is owned by the state of Mississippi or whether it's a private hospital. And there's also some other types of cases that might fall under a 1-year statute of limitations, or the shortest one. One of those, Tim Porter and I recently found ourselves involved in, but a defamation or a libel case. So if somebody defames you or commits libel against you, you only have 1 year to file suit to try to collect damages that you may have incurred.
What do you have a reason why, or can you explain why the legislator would put a time limit on things?
I never claim to know what our legislature does and why they do it. I think certain things you just have to draw a line in the sand, and there just has to be a time put on things. Now, occasionally you find yourself with a little bit of a lengthier time frame that could be based on knew or should have known. And so you might find yourself with an injury, let's say cancer, that you might have been exposed to a product many, many years ago, but you weren't diagnosed with cancer until, say, 20, 30 years later. Well, a latent injury like that, obviously you're past that statute of limitations period. And so your statute date would begin to run at the time that you knew or should have known that you had a lawsuit. And so there's various reasons as to why they might be different.
You mentioned the legislature. Let me just add, with respect to certain types of cases, they're called Mississippi tort claims cases, or if you have what's called a federal tort claim. If you sue the city, county, state, you have 1 year. The federal government, you have a little longer, you have 2 years. In those cases, they have drafted the law basically so it's harder to sue them. That's the only reason. They want to make it harder for you to be able to sue governmental entities. You don't get a jury trial. Your damages are capped. You're not even allowed to file a lawsuit until you follow this notice requirement, which is essentially giving them certain information required by statute. So it's like playing poker with someone who knows what cards you're holding before you're even allowed to file a lawsuit. And so really all it is to basically protect governmental entities. That's why they pass it.
Okay, but the same thing wouldn't apply if you and your neighbor got into it for some reason, and you're backing out, going to work in the morning, and bumpers, if you will.
No, that's correct.
So you're back to the 3-year time limit. Somebody's got to get there right away. But so now, what happens though if you're in, say, a catastrophic situation, maybe a comatose situation, and it takes a while? The same rules apply?
Yeah.
Well,
go ahead, Harry.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, unfortunately, it's those statutes are strictly construed. They used to be, you just don't want to, you want someone who's going to be in charge of that person, power of attorney, someone to act on their behalf, maybe do a guardianship or something, and then proceed on that person's behalf for them.
Okay. All right, then. Oh, that's good information. Good to know. So we have to drive extra careful, and no accidents today, everybody. Okay.